The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to Jesus and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." And the Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
When we think of Saint Martha, we usually think of a person who was too busy to listen to Jesus, and as a result, got this gentle remonstration from him. Let us look a little more deeply to what the Gospel really tells us and reflect on its implications for our everyday life. There are dangers in overwork, no matter how good that work is, and no matter how noble the motivation is for working, for doing it. And Jesus, in today's Gospel from St. Luke, as well as many spiritual guides, have always warned of the dangers of becoming too much taken up in what we do. Many are the spouses in marriage, many are the children in a family, many are friends, many members of communities wish that someone they love and someone that they need more attention from were less busy. I know it is hard not to be over busy and not to be consumed by work, particularly during our generative years. You know, when the duties of raising children, paying mortgage, running our households, our duties in civic organizations, when they fall squarely on our shoulders, it is really very difficult not to be busy. However, if you are a sensitive person, you will be conscious that it is not helpful, and you will be wrestling constantly with the pressure not to surrender yourself with too many demands. Henry Nouwen once described this phenomenon as a life that is overpacked, like an overpacked suitcase with too much in them. You know, for some people, there is always one more task to do, one more call to make, one more person to see, one more bill to pay, one more item to be picked up, and the demands never end, and we are always conscious of some task that still needs to be done. And if you notice, we can never say, "Ay, salamat sa Diyos, natapos na ang trabaho ko." We can never say that, but we can say, "Natapos na ako," or "Natapos na ang buhay ko." So my dear brothers and sisters, so we give ourselves to work, but when we overwork, this is usually also a red flag in two senses. First off, though we are generally blind to this, our work or our overwork becomes an escape. With virtually every other addiction, we are eventually sent for counseling and therapy. But when you are addicted to work, you are generally admired for your dedication, for being so masipag, for being so conscientious. You are praised for your selflessness. But if I drink too much, if I eat too much, or if I am dependent on drugs, I am frowned upon by people. People avoid me. But if I overwork, well, I am praised. And it becomes a source of pride. And they say of me, "Oh, isn't he wonderful? Isn't she so dedicated?" Workaholism is the one addiction for which we get praised. So how does overwork become an escape? You notice among us religious and among us priests, people who are too busy in the apostolate are many times unhappy in their communities. It is a way of escape. Same thing in the home. When we are unhappy with how things are, when we are unhappy with our relationships, we pile work on our shoulders. We remain busy and preoccupied as an inbuilt excuse and a rationalization so as not to have to deal with painful realities of community life, painful realities of family life. And so, it becomes our ultimate protection. We do not get to smell the flowers, yes, but we do not need to deal with the deeper things that are happening and that lurk behind the surface of our lives. Kaya nga sinasabi minsan, sa labas, the people kiss their feet and the earth on which they walk. But sa sariling community nila, sinusuka sila. Or, same thing in families. People admire them, people love them outside. But when they come back to their homes, it becomes another story. Beyond becoming an escape, there is a second major danger. And this is, the more we invest in our work, the greater the danger of taking too much of our meaning and personal significance from what we do. So as we become more and more immersed in our work, to the detriment of our relationships, we will naturally draw more and more of our value from our work alone. And so, we will see that the dangers of this are many, and the least among them is the danger that we will eventually find it difficult, harder and harder, to find meaning in anything else except work, except producing, except making money, except bringing funds into the community, instead of looking at other important things. Old habits are hard to break. If we spend years drawing our identity and our worth as persons from our work, from our apostolate, we who are religious and priests, for being loved for what I produce, it will not be easy to shift gears when you are older. Then, when you become, and I become debilitated and sick, when we can no longer work, when we can no longer bring in the funds, when we can no longer make money, we get into a terrible depression because all our worth and all our meaning is in our work. That is the problem. Dear my dear brothers and sisters, while we also criticize overwork, we should also criticize being tamad. This is no virtue there. Idleness may be the devil's workshop, but busyness is not always a virtue. This is the lesson today. So my dear brothers and sisters, why then did Jesus praise Mary? You know why? Because there are moments in our lives, there are circumstances in our commitments when some things are more important than work. When we are so busy that we no longer see the faces of our children, when we are so busy that we no longer participate in what is happening in the community, when we are so busy that we think that work is the absolute value, then there is a problem. Because there are times, there are circumstances, there are moments that we have to let go of that work, no matter how noble, no matter how important, because there are other things more important than work in certain cases and at certain circumstances. In the case of Mary, Jesus was there. So, she let go of it. I give my attention to Christ. So, my dear brothers and sisters, in other words, be enough Mary to sit passively once in a while. But be enough Martha also, so that you may be privileged to, like God, work and renew the world. Martha and Mary are necessary. To end, Saint Teresa of Avila, the great mystic and doctor of the church, in her 6 mansions, when she writes about the spiritual life, she says, it is not a choice between Martha or Mary. We are called to be Martha and Mary. So today, we ask for that gift of discernment. Work, yes, but in the proper way, at the proper time. But we should also learn how to sit at the Lord's feet, to see the faces of our children, to get involved in our communities, to care for our relationships, which are also as important as work.